Welcome to Getting It Right with NEPS. Today, I'm the one who will be sharing with you, good people, and thank you for your time. I'll be talking about a subject called God's Big Story. God's Big Story, it is about the Bible because the Bible, it's God's story. And this talks exactly about that. So, in a way, it is a summary of the story of the Bible, which is in four chapters, so to speak. However, before we get in there, the Bible on its own talks about God, who God really is. It also talks about us, who really are we. It talks about the world we live in, the things we do, and the world that God has created. It talks about the problems that we have in this world. The Bible talks about the solutions for the problems that we have in this world. So, looking at this God's big story, it is practically as a summary, as I said, and it's one of many ways of summarizing the Bible. In this case, I would say it is a biblical view, a biblical lens on how do we look uh, at the Bible on its own. The Bible briefly was written over a period of 1,500 years by, give or take, about 47 authors. So it's not something that happened overnight. God was thoughtful about it, intentional about it, and covers everything. There is no story in the Bible that contradicts another story. They all work together. So let's go into summarizing the Bible story, God's big story. Number one, there is creation in the Bible. In Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, it tells us about God who created everything. It tells us about God who is being relational because there was a relationship between God and the nature that he created and also the people that he created. It talks about the creation being good because every time God created something on the number of days he took, on the 6 days he took, he always said at the end, it is good, meaning everything is perfect. So during creation, everything was perfect. And God gave us the creation so that we can enjoy it. He gave us the creation so that it can be stewarded. We are the stewards of God's creation. And then there's us. When God created man, He created male and female. And He said it is not good for men to be alone. In all other things, He said it is good. So at creation or during creation, there was male and female, both created wonderfully by God. Also, we were created for a purpose to fellowship with God. That is creation. Now we come to a fall. Uh, in the fall, there's a big story. There's a big problem of sin. There was rebellion in the fall. There was people rebelled. God's creation rebelled against the very same creator who is God. Relationships were broken. The fellowship between men and God got broken. During the fall, the love relationship that was between Adam and Eve got broken because of the sin. And the people were dead spiritually during the fall. Yes, we were there as physical beings, but the relationship that we had with God, because God does not stay in the same place or does not dwell in a place where there is sin. So there was this death spiritually. And now, when there is sin, there is a debt to be paid when there is sin. Because men sinned, they were responsible. They had to pay a price for that. And the Bible tells us the wages or the price for sin is death. However, because God is a gracious God, there had to be a mechanism, there had to be a way of overcoming the very same sin. That is when God banished man from the Garden of Eden, because God created man for a purpose. So it was not going to be good for a man to remain in sin forever by remaining or staying in the very same garden where men created or committed sin. Because God said, if you allow men to be or to remain or continue in the garden, having tested or ate from the tree of good and evil, man was going to now taste the fruit from the tree of life and live in sin forever. That's chapter number 2. Chapter number 3, or section number 3 of God's story, is redemption. In redemption, there is something very central: the cross and an empty tomb. Let me repeat this one. Under redemption, two central things: the cross and also an empty tomb. There is no other religion that talks about the cross and an empty tomb. It's only when it comes to Jesus or in Christianity. So, in redemption, there was or there is reconciliation. The relationship that was broken between men and God, it's now brought back together through Jesus Christ. In redemption, there is salvation. People are being saved from the sins they committed, having been warned by God. In redemption, there's a sacrifice that had to be made for the atonement of the very sin that men committed. So instead of men paying the price, now sin had to be paid through a sacrifice, which later, or we now know, to be Jesus Christ. There is redemption. We were now redeemed. We were now free from the bondage of sin through redemption by Jesus Christ. We are now going to the last chapter of the big God's big story, which is eternity or renewed creation. When we talk about eternity, we are talking about renewed bodies, because where we are heading to, as Christians, we believe we are heading to a life with our renewed and glorious bodies. There will be restoration of the relationship we lost with Jesus Christ. I mean, with God during the fall of men. We will be having perfect lives, so to speak. We'll have perfect lives. We will live endless lives in the restoration, in the redemption. Also, we will be living a God centered life. So, I spoke about 4 chapters: the creation, the fall, the redemption, and eternity. Now, take this as a tool that applies to anything in our daily lives. Work, for instance, you can use this tool to analyze work in terms of creation. An example would be work was created to be fun and to be enjoyed during creation, as God created everything perfect. But after sin, work became hard. It became a curse. During redemption, work is not that hard anymore because we are doing it with Jesus. But in eternity, everything will be restored that we lost in creation. Work will be enjoyable. Work will be fun to have, and we'll be using God to praise it. Thank you very much for listening. Engage with me. Ask questions. Like our page. Follow us and comment as we go forward. And thank you very much.